I gave up my life for a promise. The problem is, I never checked who made the promise. The sun hung low over Lagos like a copper coin, casting a reddish haze on the oil-slicked roads. Isaac Adebayo sat on an upturned bucket, wiping grease from his hands as the last customer of the day drove off in a sputtering car. His garage, a loose collection of rusted tools, cracked cement, and tarpaulins stretched overhead, had seen better days. He had been a mechanic since age 13, after his father died and he had to leave school. Now 27, Isaac was known for his skill, not his success. Business had dried up. Inflation rose faster than his rates. Everyone came to fix their cars, but few came with money. But Isaac had something most others didn't. A dream. He wanted to go to Europe. It started as a whisper in the back alleys, between oil drums and fried yam stalls. "You can make 2,000 euros in a week, just fixing cars in Italy," someone said once. Then another, "I know someone who can get you the visa." He laughed it off, until the day Mr. Fatai walked in. He wore a tailored suit, polished shoes that clicked like authority, and sunglasses that reflected back your own doubt. He drove a white Mercedes. People moved when he passed. "I hear you're the best mechanic around," Fatai said casually, sipping malt while Isaac worked on his brakes. "I do my best, sir." "You want to work in Europe?" Isaac paused. The question hit him like a slap. Fatai grinned. "Work permit, job waiting, legal entry. I've sent more than 300 boys in the last 2 years. They're living good now, some even sending money home." Isaac's eyes burned with questions, but his voice cracked with hope. "What's the cost?" 2.7 million naira. Isaac coughed. "You mean 2.7 million Nigerian nairas? That's almost 7 years of my earnings." "Good things aren't cheap," Fatai replied, handing him a business card. "1 week to decide." "I don't wait long." Isaac couldn't sleep that night. He stared at the tin roof of his one-room home, listening to rats scurry in the corners. The neighbor's generator buzzed. A baby cried next door. His hands trembled as he thought of his mother, his 2 younger brothers, how they looked at him like he held the future in his palms. The next morning, he began selling. His prized wrench set, the one he'd inherited from his father, gone. His workshop space, gone. The last piece of land in their family's name, held since his grandfather's time, sold to a man who barely looked him in the eye. His mother wept silently but said nothing. He borrowed the rest from elders, neighbors, even his church's building fund. "Just help me," he pleaded, "and I'll make it all back." When he returned to Fatai with a plastic bag full of cash, the man didn't flinch. He handed Isaac a manila envelope with documents. A printed Italian work visa, a flight ticket from Lagos to Rome, a certificate of employment from a company Isaac had never heard of. "Your flight is next Friday. Dress well." Friday came too fast. At the airport, Isaac wore his only suit, slightly faded but neatly ironed. His mother pressed a handkerchief into his hand and whispered, "Don't forget who you are, Isaac." Outside, a small crowd had gathered to see him off. He wasn't the first to leave for Europe, but he was the first in years. People prayed, hugged him, handed him letters to deliver to distant cousins in Napoli and Milan. People they hadn't heard from in months. At the departure gate, he felt invincible. On the plane, seated next to 12 others, men like him, excited and nervous, he allowed himself to dream. He imagined fixing Ferraris in Italy, sending money home, flying his mother to visit. He imagined being somebody. The flight was uneventful. They flew over endless clouds, the hum of the engines a lullaby of progress. Hours passed. He slept. He dreamt of cobblestones and spires. But when the wheels finally touched down and the announcement came, nothing made sense. There were no cheers of arrival, no signs that read Benvenuti a Roma. Instead, Arabic script danced across signs outside the window. Military trucks lined the runway, and when the doors opened, the heat that rushed in was dry, searing. "Where are we?" a passenger asked. No answer. They were herded off the plane by stern-faced men with rifles. The immigration officers spoke in fast Arabic, pointing at passports and snapping orders. None of the passengers were allowed to ask questions. Isaac's passport was taken, his visa discarded like trash. One of the others, a boy named Sunday from Edo, tried to run. A guard hit him with a baton so hard he didn't get up again. The rest learned quickly, obedience meant survival. They were loaded into dark vans. As the convoy pulled away from the airport, Isaac peered through the slits in the window. Sand dunes stretched for miles. The air outside shimmered like heat waves on a stove. "Dis no be Rome," someone muttered. A tense silence followed. Hours passed. They stopped at a high-walled compound surrounded by barbed wire and floodlights. There were guards everywhere. Isaac's heartbeat thundered in his ears. Then came Musa, a tall man in a clean white robe with eyes like sharpened glass. "Welcome," he said with an accent neither fully African nor fully Arab. "You will stay here for a short time. Then, if you behave, you will go to Europe." One man shouted, "But we were told." Musa raised a finger. Two guards seized the man, dragging him behind a building. A scream rang out, then silence. "You are not prisoners," Musa continued, "but you are not free. You owe money. Your debts will be repaid through labor." The group was stunned. Isaac's mind raced. This wasn't immigration, it was trafficking. He didn't know where he was. Libya? Algeria? He had no papers, no phone, no money. He wasn't in Rome. He wasn't even close. That night, he was shown to his bunk. Wooden planks stacked in a narrow, filthy room with 30 other men. The air was thick with sweat and hopelessness. He sat there, numb, staring at the ceiling, wondering how it had all gone wrong. His neighbor, a quiet Ghanaian man with hollow eyes, whispered, "You're new. Don't speak too much. Don't ask questions. And whatever you do, don't run." "Where are we?" Isaac whispered. "Does it matter?" The man replied. "You sold your life for a visa. Now you'll pay for that dream." As Isaac lay down, something scraped against his palm. He reached under the mattress. There, carved into the wood, barely visible in the dark, were 6 words that froze his blood. "This is not the end, dig." Isaac didn't sleep that night. His body ached from the cramped bunk. The air in the room was sour, heavy with the breath of too many men packed into too small a space. But it wasn't the discomfort that kept him awake. It was the message. "This is not the end, dig." He traced the words with his fingers again, making sure they weren't a dream. The grooves in the wood were real, carved by someone else who had once lain here. Someone who must have tried to escape. Was it a warning? A clue? Or just the last desperate act of a broken mind? He didn't know, but it was the first thread of hope he'd had since the plane landed. At dawn, the guards burst in with batons and loud commands in Arabic. They herded the men outside into a yard of packed red sand, surrounded by fences laced with wire. Beyond that, desert. They were made to stand in rows. Men with clipboards shouted out names and numbers. Isaac recognized a few: Sunday, the boy who had been beaten; Osei, the quiet Ghanaian from the bunk below; and Zubair, a boy from Kano who didn't speak unless asked. No one knew what was happening. Then trucks arrived. Not passenger trucks, work trucks, the kind used for hauling stone and scrap. The guards began sorting the men into groups. Some were sent to dig trenches under the sun. Others were loaded into trucks and driven to unknown places. Isaac ended up in the quarry group. For hours, they swung hammers against stubborn rock, breaking stones into gravel that was hauled away by older prisoners. The sun scorched their backs, and water was rationed like gold. One of the guards, a man with a scar across his face, beat anyone who paused too long. By noon, Isaac's hands were blistered, his legs trembled, but his mind burned brighter than his body. That night, back in the bunk, he waited until the others had drifted into exhausted sleep. Then, moving quietly, he peeled the thin foam from his mattress and began scraping the floor beneath his bunk with a broken spoon he'd smuggled from the mess hall. The floor was concrete, rough and dry, but not solid. After an hour, he'd made only a shallow dent, but it was something. And hidden under the edge of the frame, Where dust collected and no one looked, he found something else. A folded scrap of paper. It was faded, smeared with grime, but the words were still legible. The key is in the storm drain. Third pipe behind the laundry. Night only. Don't trust the guards. Especially not Musa. Isaac's breath caught. This wasn't madness. Someone had planned escape. But who? And how long ago? He reread the note until the words blurred. Then he returned it to its hiding place. He didn't dare move tonight. Not with so many eyes around him. The next day, he volunteered for laundry duty. It meant extra work, but also movement. He folded clothes, scrubbed them in cracked tubs, and watched the other laborers as they moved across the compound. That's when he saw her. A woman tall, wearing a gray hijab, eyes sharp and watchful. She wasn't one of the guards. She carried no weapons. She moved freely, but spoke to no one. Isaac asked another worker, a man from Senegal, "Who is she?" The man lowered his voice. "They call her Mariam. She's Musa's assistant. She handles documents, passports, identity papers. Some say she was trafficked too, long ago, but now she helps him run this place." "Does she ever help anyone escape?" The man scoffed. "If she ever did, they never returned to tell us." Isaac filed the name away. That night, when the guards made their rounds and the generator roared to life, drowning most sounds, Isaac crept out of the bunkhouse and made his way toward the laundry building. He kept to the shadows, heart thudding in his chest like a drum. Behind the building, half buried in sand, were 3 rusted pipes that jutted out from a concrete wall. Storm drains. He counted to the 3rd pipe, dropped to his knees, reached inside. Nothing. He pushed further. Grit scraped his arm raw and then felt it cold metal. A small tin box wedged deep. He pulled it out and crawled behind a stack of old oil drums to open it. Inside was a folded map, hand-drawn, showing the layout of the compound, and a key, rusted but intact. The map showed a tunnel entrance under the water tank, behind the main kitchen. The note scribbled on the back read, "Use during sandstorm, only chance." Isaac's mind raced. Sandstorms weren't uncommon in this part of the Sahara. When they came, they lasted hours, blinding guards, disabling cameras. If he could survive long enough to wait one out, he might have a shot. But he couldn't do it alone. He thought of Sunday, the beaten boy who still bore bruises on his ribs, and Osei, who had lived quietly and without complaint. That night, Isaac whispered to them both under the cover of darkness. They didn't believe him at first. No one did. "Every month someone disappears," Sunday said. "They tell us those men went to Europe, but no one ever hears from them again." "Because they didn't go to Europe," Isaac replied. "They were sold. Or worse." "You want to run?" Osei asked. "That's suicide." "I want to escape," Isaac said. "I have a map, a key, and a plan." They sat in silence. Even the rats in the corners stopped moving, as if listening. Finally, Sunday nodded. "I'm in." Osei hesitated. "If we're caught, we're dead either way," Isaac finished. "At least this way we die trying." For the next week, they prepared. They stored water in empty detergent bottles, smuggled dry bread under floorboards, marked patrol times, learned the layout of the compound by heart. Each night, Isaac scratched at the tunnel entrance behind the kitchen, hiding his work with debris. But what they couldn't control was the weather. The sandstorm didn't come until the 11th night. It began as a howl, soft, distant, like a whisper from the earth. By midnight, it was a roar. The sky turned ochre, and the air filled with grit so thick it turned flashlights useless. Guards retreated indoors. Floodlights went dark. This was it. Isaac, Sunday, and Osei moved like shadows. They reached the kitchen. Isaac scraped the last layer of dirt from the tunnel entrance and forced the key into the rusted padlock. Clicked. The door opened into blackness. Behind them, the compound was consumed by sand. They climbed in. For 30 terrifying minutes, they crawled through a narrow shaft of mud and wire, following the lines drawn on the map. The air was foul. Osei nearly passed out. Then, ahead, a shaft of moonlight. They emerged into the open desert, lungs burning, eyes wide with disbelief. But before they could take a step, a spotlight snapped on. A voice shouted, "Stop!" They turned. Miriam stood there, alone, scarf whipping in the wind. "Go," she said. "Now." "What?" Isaac shouted. "Run." Behind her, guards poured out of the compound. Too late. Miriam had delayed them. They ran. Into the sand. Into the dark. Isaac didn't look back. They ran until their legs gave out. The desert swallowed them whole, miles of wind-blown silence stretching in every direction. The moon offered little guidance, blurred by the haze of the lingering storm. Sand clung to every pore, burning their eyes and drying out their throats. Isaac collapsed first, chest heaving, arms scraped raw from the tunnel crawl. Osei dropped beside him, coughing up the grit that had wedged itself into his lungs. Sunday stood the longest, peering into the darkness with wide eyes, body tense like a deer caught between predator and road. No one spoke. They had done it. They were out. But freedom in the Sahara was a cruel joke without water, direction, or protection. "How far are we from the city?" Sunday asked after a long silence. "There is no city," Osei whispered. "Not for hundreds of miles." Isaac pulled out the map. The tunnel exit was marked with a tiny X and a single arrow pointing northeast, scribbled in a trembling hand. 12 kilometers, look for 3 rocks. Triangular. Then go east. He stared at it, trying to gauge direction in the featureless expanse. "If we head that way," he pointed, "we might find something. Shelter. Water. Or more traffickers," Osei muttered. Sunday nodded grimly. "Still better than staying here. They'll be hunting us by morning." They moved under cover of darkness, every step a battle. The wind slowed to a whisper, leaving behind dunes of deep sand that swallowed their ankles and sapped their strength. Time lost meaning. Minutes bled into hours. Isaac's tongue cracked. His lips bled. Then, just as the sun began to break the horizon, they saw it. 3 stones, jagged and ancient, jutting from the sand in a rough triangle like broken teeth. Isaac knelt beside them and brushed away loose sand. Buried beneath was another mark, black paint nearly erased by time. An arrow. They turned east. By midday, the heat had grown unbearable. The sand scalded their feet through worn shoes. Sunday fainted once. Osei carried him until his own knees buckled. Isaac kept them going, fueled by nothing but will and the faint hope that someone, whoever had made the map, had left something else ahead. And then a shack, half buried in sand, camouflaged against the dunes, leaning like a man too old to stand upright. The tin roof shimmered under the sun. A plastic drum sat beside it, cracked and half full of brackish water. They stumbled inside. The air was slightly cooler. The floor was covered in rugs, each one faded by age. A small notebook sat on a wooden crate, protected under a slab of glass. Isaac opened it. "If you found this, you're one of the few. My name is Kamal. I escaped too. This place saved me. There's water beneath, dig carefully. Go north by night. Watch for the blue door. It leads to the smuggler who doesn't sell people." Isaac read the words out loud, voice trembling. "The blue door," Sunday repeated. "That sounds like a miracle." They dug where Kamal had marked, beneath the rugs, just enough to reach the edge of an old cistern. The water was stale but drinkable. Saved them. That night they left again. They traveled by stars, resting during the day in the shack. Osei used a stick to count their distance. Isaac tied a string to his wrist and let it trail behind, so none would stray. But even the desert has eyes. On the 3rd night, as they crested a dune, Sunday froze mid-step. "There," he whispered, a flicker of movement. A man on a dune, silhouetted against the moon, holding something long in his hand. A rifle. "Back," Isaac hissed. They slid behind the dune, pressing themselves into the sand. Another shadow appeared to the left. They were being tracked. "How?" Osei gasped. "No footprints. No sound." "They have dogs," Sunday said. "I've seen them use dogs before." Isaac's mind spun. They couldn't run. Footsteps in sand left trails. They couldn't hide, no cover. But there was one thing they hadn't tried. Isaac reached into his shirt and pulled out a small item he'd pocketed back at the shack. A flare. It had been tucked behind the crate, half buried, likely forgotten by Kamal or whoever came before. He turned to the others. If we run, we die. But if we distract them... Are you mad? Osei asked. A flare will bring more. Or scare them, Isaac countered. We're not the only ones in this desert. Armed men chasing shadows, it might look like something else. Something bigger. Sunday took the flare. I'll go. No, Isaac said. We all move. But when we hit that ridge, I'll fire it in the opposite direction. They'll follow the light. We go dark and head for the blue door. They moved fast, sticking low. The flare was lit and launched, bursting into a red bloom in the night sky. Shouts followed. The hunters scattered toward the light. The trio bolted in the opposite direction, hearts hammering, lungs ready to burst. By dawn, they found it. A village, small, dusty, crumbling around the edges. Goats wandered freely. Children stared with wide eyes. Isaac asked for the blue door in broken Arabic. An old woman pointed to a wall, paint peeling but unmistakably blue. They knocked. No answer. Knocked again. The door creaked open. A man with sharp eyes and a missing thumb stood inside. You're not from here, he said. Isaac nodded. We're from the compound. The man's expression darkened. Many say that. Few come back to say more. We don't want to go back, Osei said. Sunday collapsed at the doorstep, legs finally giving out. The man looked at them, then stepped aside. Come in. We'll talk. But understand this. Once you enter, you can't ever go back to who you were. Isaac looked at the others. They stepped inside. The inside of the blue door was cooler than the desert sun. A cramped room with cracked plaster walls and dusty floors. Faint traces of incense hung in the air. The man who had opened the door motioned for Isaac, Sunday, and Osei to sit on worn cushions arranged around a low wooden table. His name was Idris. He was a former smuggler turned protector. Idris explained the truth of the desert, the web of traffickers, the deals in hidden markets, the way men were sold like cattle. But not all, he said quietly. There are some of us who refuse to sell people. Instead, we help. Isaac listened carefully. The story Idris told was a map of shadow and light. Idris's group operated underground, moving escaped captives between safe houses, feeding them, clothing them, helping them get to ports where they could be smuggled safely abroad or back to their families. But Idris had enemies, powerful ones. He showed them a photo. A man named Musa, the same man Isaac had heard about from Mariam, the brutal overseer of the compound. Musa controlled a ruthless network that spanned across borders. He was a man who crushed anyone who threatened his trade. Idris's voice grew cold. Musa wants you back, or dead. Suddenly, the door slammed open. Two men stepped inside, armed and glaring. Idris, we have a problem, one said. They were surrounded. The moment was a trap. Isaac, Sunday, and Osei tensed, ready to run. But Idris held up a hand. We're not finished yet. Idris's calm broke the tension. Musa's men are close. You will not leave until you are ready. Over the next days, Idris taught them to move silently, to read the desert signs, and to defend themselves. Isaac's body grew stronger, his spirit steadier. But the danger was constant. One night, as they slept, a fire broke out near the safe house. Smoke and screams filled the air. They found us, Idris growled. They fled into the night once more, hearts pounding with the knowledge that Musa's reach was longer and darker than they had imagined. Isaac knew their fight had only just begun. The desert night was alive with whispers, the rustling of sand, the distant howl of unseen creatures, and the murmurs of men closing in. Isaac, Sunday, Osei, and Idris crouched behind a cluster of thorny bushes, eyes sharp, breaths shallow. They had planned this moment for weeks, a desperate strike against Musa's network to cut off the flow of terror. Idris revealed the location of Musa's main stronghold, a fortress hidden in the Rocky Mountains beyond the desert. It was heavily guarded but vulnerable from the east, where the cliffs met a narrow ravine. "We strike at dawn," Idris said, voice steady but grim. "This will be the fight that decides who owns this land." The four men moved like shadows as first light bled across the horizon. The sun rose red as blood over the jagged peaks. Isaac's heart hammered. He wasn't just fighting for his freedom now. He was fighting for every soul who had suffered as he had. As they neared the fortress, a silent alarm was triggered. Musa's men poured out in waves, armed, ruthless, and snarling with hatred. Gunfire erupted, echoing through the valley like thunder. Isaac dodged behind rocks, heart pounding, his hands trembling as he returned fire with a salvaged rifle. Osei flanked the enemy, using guerrilla tactics Idris had taught them, while Sunday provided cover with precise shots from their hidden perch. The battle was brutal. Men fell on both sides. Smoke and dust clouded the air. The sun rose higher, scorching the warriors still standing. Isaac caught sight of Musa, towering, scarred, wielding a pistol with deadly precision. Their eyes locked. The final showdown. Isaac charged, fueled by years of pain and a desire for justice. Musa sneered and fired, but missed. Isaac closed the distance, grabbing a jagged piece of metal from the ground. The fight was savage, primal, a desperate cry. Musa stumbled. Isaac struck. The man who had haunted his nightmares lay defeated. But victory was bittersweet. As reinforcements arrived, Idris ordered a retreat. "We've made our point," he said, "but this war is far from over." Isaac looked at his friends, bloodied, exhausted, but alive. They had survived. They had broken the chains. The sun climbed high, illuminating the desert that had once been a prison. Isaac knew that freedom was not just a place, it was a journey, and this was only the beginning.